The phone rang on the table. Paul did not move from his place at the window. He knew who it was. He had a blank look on his face, and his mouth was dry. Outside the window, a sad winter evening was coming to an end. At a distance, he could see the glimmering Christmas lights. The phone rang again. He could barely control his instincts now to receive it, but he resisted. His heart was racing. He did not move from his place. At a distance, he saw two kids coming out of their homes with baskets in their hands, and he thought he could hear a hymn being sung. He muttered to himself,
"A ray of hope?"
The phone rang again. This time, he glanced at it. He saw the name and could not resist anymore. He answered it and did not say anything. The voice said,
"Hello? Are you there? Enough is enough. Now come back and make sure to get back what you've taken."
Paul hung up the call. His hands shivered as he put down the phone. It rang again. Paul toggled his phone to silent mode. He told himself,
"You have a plan, and that is why you are here."
He tore a page from his notebook and wrote down everything he knew and whatever was there with him. At the bottom, he wrote down his real address and signed with his father's name. He stuck it to the bag he had with him. He thought to himself.
This is it.
He continued looking out of the window and now could see glistening snow on the roof. He got up from his bed and stared at his phone. He did not want to take it with him, but then he had to. He walked out with thick boots on and treading over the snow. He made his way towards a cafe. He entered it. It was fairly deserted at this hour. Yet the boy at the counter, greeting him, said,
"Merry Christmas, sir. How may I help you?"
Paul looked up at him, but did not reply. Sitting at one corner, Paul observed the boy at the counter, who was arranging all the cakes that had newly arrived, one at a time on 3 different shelves. All this while, Paul's phone was constantly vibrating in his pocket, but now he didn't care to have a look at it. The boy switched on the TV and changed the channel from the usual carol singing at this time of the year to a news
Good
channel
evening.
broadcast.
In a breaking development, we bring you the list of missing
The headlines were on,
individuals from the
and the
county.
reporter was
Sarah
reading
Miller,
out lists
a 30-year-old
of missing
woman with
people
blonde hair
with their
and last
details
seen
and
wearing
a
a red
picture of
jacket.
them displayed at the site.
Authorities are urging anyone with information to come forward. Now, turning to our next case, Paul Jones from the county of...
The boy looked towards Paul with suspicion. Paul noticed this and looked down to avoid looking at the boy. He took out his phone and opened the lock, pretending to be busy. He saw there were hundreds of missed calls and texts from people he knew. The boy came up to him and asked,
"Would you like a cup of coffee?"
Paul replied,
"Yes,
almost instinctively,
an espresso, please."
in a dismissive voice. The boy went back to prepare his coffee. Paul just kept the money on the table and left before the boy could turn back. He was going to just walk back again to the place which he had rented for the night. On his way, he noticed a fairly lit street in the moonlight. All the homes at a distance had twinkling lights which reflected on the snow and made the surroundings somehow jolly. He saw 2 kids and their parents going into the woods. Paul, without a second thought, followed them. They went through the woods into a small clearing and into a church. He stopped there. He did not have the courage to go in there,
"Never like this."
he said to himself. But then he didn't go back. He sat there on a bark of wood close to the premises. He heard the Mass begin and could hear solemn Christmas hymns. He took out his phone to record what he could hear. He said to himself.
Such angelic voices.
His phone was still vibrating. He picked it up and in a rage,
I've had enough of you, and this work. Stop calling me!
The grim voice of his dad replied.
Paul, you know you won't get too far with this.
I don't want to do this to you. Return back and return with what you have with you.
Paul's throat was so dry and he was shivering. He didn't reply and hung up. Paul looked through the dark woods at the city. It was filled with lights, and the children were bursting crackers. He sat there reflecting on what he wanted to leave behind. He was shivering, more out of nervousness than out of cold. He knew his dad's men would come after him. He thought to himself.
But I could not look back now.
Paul was planning this for many months now. He was fed up with the life of darkness. He missed his mother, and although it was impossible, he wanted to find her. A life that he had thought was normal, for his father to make him learn how to live by himself. First, it was small thefts, and then bigger burglaries at bungalows. But now what he had seen was too much for Paul. And the guilt that he carried within himself, and the stains on his hands, and that bag, that dreadful bag, it had everything that he needed to put all of this to an end. He knew this, too,
Shall pass.
as his father always said, and they,
Will not be caught ever.
but Paul was caught in something much deeper and darker, and he did not want any piece of it anymore. The Mass had ended, and the small congregation of the town was coming out while greeting each other Merry Christmas. After Paul's mother passed away, he never celebrated Christmas. He didn't know much about it either. He just sat there and observed from a distance. The mothers holding the child's hand, leading them to the crib, where they kissed the baby Jesus' feet and joined hands and prayed. Paul wanted to pray and tell someone all of this. He needed someone to trust. Paul wanted to go closer and observe their ways. He saw how they shared greetings, cakes, and joys and laughter on their faces. Paul never knew life could be so beautiful. And just then, his phone rang again. He rejected the call. He went to the settings and put off the virtual private network server. He formatted his phone and called the police. As they picked it up, he kept it right there and left. He knew now where he was heading, towards a city full of lights, towards a newborn beginning of life. We are born once and we die once, but there are numerous beginnings and endings within that one.